The All-Star Game was moved out of Atlanta in 21 because of a law that former President Biden described as Jim Crow in the 21st century, and it was framed as a protest. Dave, in the 2021 MLB Network special on Stop Asian Hate, you said, and I quote, "I think it's just being relentless with our voices. This is not something that's just an isolated moment in time that we're talking about. It's something that needs to be talked about on an ongoing basis and be relentless with it." What happened to being relentless with it, and why are we still in Atlanta when this is on books?
Where in the hell do they find these so-called journalists that are still overly obsessed with mythical racism? Correct me if I'm wrong here. I'm looking down here at my calendar. Now, it's warning me of a potential tropical depression that's developing right now in the Gulf, or as the Trumper would call it, the Gulf of America. But other than that, my calendar is telling me that we are currently living in the year of our Lord 2025, which means it's no longer 2020. It's no longer 2021 when the business of mythical racism was thriving. Last I checked, the business of mythical racism was bankrupt. The lone survivor was the wicked weave Joy Reid, and MSNBC confiscated her broom back in February right before they fired her ass. So I'm struggling to understand why a so-called baseball writer, I'm struggling to understand why a so-called journalist, someone who is paid to report and promote Major League Baseball, I'm struggling to understand why, in the year of our Lord 2025, they would ask why the All-Star Game was being hosted in Atlanta. That alone is ridiculous enough. But to make matters worse, this so-called journalist, she presented the question to Pat McAfee. 4 years ago, the city of Atlanta was supposed to host the All-Star Game. April 2021, Rob Manfred decides to move the All-Star Game and its hundreds of millions of dollars of economic benefits out of Atlanta. Instead of being played in Atlanta, the All-Star Game was in Denver that year. Why? Because deacons at Woke United Methodist, they were outraged that Georgia had the audacity to crack down on voting laws. They passed restrictions on mail-in votes. They imposed stricter controls on voting centers. My inside sources, they're also telling me that you've got to have proper identification to cast a vote in Georgia. According to the deacons, this is outrageous! Georgia is restricting votes from marginalized groups! This is so racist! For starters, think about how insulting this has to be to marginalized groups. What the deacons are basically saying is marginalized groups have no way to make it to the polls to vote. The only way they can vote is through the mail, which means the deacons are basically saying that they can't afford transportation or they can't locate the polls. It is absolutely insulting. Now, the woke media, they claim that Georgia was returning to the Jim Crow era. What was their solution to the problem? How did they defend the marginalized groups they claim to be defending? They pressured Major League Baseball to move the All-Star Game from Atlanta to Denver. Now, just think about this. Black people make up 47% of the population in Atlanta. Denver is 54% white, with black people consisting of around 8% of the population in Denver. Let's try to understand the logic here. The deacons are claiming that Georgia is restricting black voters. So their answer to the problem is to move the All-Star Game out of a majority black city. They're taking the All-Star Game and the millions of dollars it generates for black-owned businesses in Atlanta, and they're giving those millions of dollars to white people in Denver. I'm no subscriber to Forbes, but I'm pretty sure this strategy is no bueno. I'm pretty sure this strategy does not help black businesses. This year, Atlanta is hosting the All-Star game like they should have been doing 4 years ago. Time heals all wounds. Everyone has moved on, except some unknown journalist who just can't seem to let it go. Make sure to like and subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter at KC_BTL84. Link to the second channel is in the description below. Today on the second channel, talked about the major problem right now in the WNBA. Now, believe it or not, this problem has nothing to do with the three-point shooting slump that seems to be affecting damn near every player in the league. The WNBA has a serious problem with incompetent officiating. I provide a possible reason as to why the officiating in the WNBA is so bad, and why the solution isn't as simple as just making some rule changes. So if you haven't already, click the link in the description below, subscribe to the second channel. How many of you guys have ever heard of Jen Ramos Eisen? Anyone? Anyone familiar with Jen? Uncle KC, is she related to Rich Eisen? I hope not, at least for his sake. That would make for some awkward conversations at Thanksgiving. Uncle Rich, have you apologized for your white privilege? What do you think of white nationalism and the occupation of indigenous lands by white men and women who married each other? Your ancestors took this land from Squanto, and you built a dangerous mansion that's causing irreparable damage to our climate. Ew! It is extremely difficult to find background information on the lovely Jen Ramos Eisen. Her Twitter account is locked. I'm assuming she was getting backlash from normal people over her ridiculous question from yesterday. So she set her Twitter account to private, and more than likely, she complained about it on Blue Sky where no one could hear it. According to her Instagram, where Jen She/Her has amassed a sizable following of 200 followers. Jen is a baseball labor/economic journalist for Defector Media. According to her profile on Defector, Jen is responsible for covering minor league baseball. Since 2023, Jen has published a total of 5 articles. Now, the good news is, she's already reached her aggressive quota for this year by publishing 2 articles. There's a reason I'm pointing this out. I'm wondering why an internet journalist, I hate to even use the word journalist here because writing about baseball is a hobby for Jen. I'm wondering how an unknown blogger received a press credential and was allowed to ask a question at what appears to be a press conference. Yesterday, Pat McAfee, he was hosting a press conference with Dave Roberts and Paul Skins. Dave Roberts is the manager for the Dodgers. Paul is a pitcher for the Pirates. And Pat McAfee, he's the resident expert who was hired to make things interesting. The point is, you got a manager, a pitcher, and Pat McAfee promoting the All-Star game in Atlanta. They were not there to discuss voting laws. They weren't there to discuss mythical racism. They were there to talk about baseball. For some reason, pretend journalist Jen, she decided to turn this festive event into a polished turd. For starters, Jen came to the event wearing a Fauci mask. Strike 1. Then she asked a question that had absolutely nothing to do with Major League Baseball. Strike 2. When the gentleman didn't understand what the hell she was asking, Jen referenced John Biden in a failed attempt to reinforce her point while also thinking it would give her credibility. Strike 3. Watch for yourself.
There is a law on the books here in Atlanta that is a voter suppression law that Joe Biden has called Jim Crow of the 21st century. What happened to being relentless with our voices, and why are we in Atlanta when this law is still on the books? And it is a dangerous situation to be a journalist in Atlanta because Atlanta has detained the most journalists by ICE.
I don't know if any of us are the experts or the ones that should be giving answers on that, but respect and appreciate the way you feel about it. And I would assume that there was a reason or some conversation that was had by the MLB and the state that all parties thought that this would be a wonderful host city for the All-Star game, and I think everybody is all very excited to be back in the beautiful city of Atlanta. With everything else you're talking about, I don't know if Dave is a lobbyist or Paul is a lobbyist. I think she was talking to you.
I'm not a politician. I do feel that everyone has their right to voice thoughts, but right now I really choose to just focus on the players and the game.
Pat McAfee's a hell of a lot nicer than I am, which is probably why he is hosting this event and I'm not. To his credit, Pat McAfee was very gracious. He was overly understanding with his response. As soon as I saw the Fauci mask followed with that ridiculous question, I would have said, did we walk into the same building? I saw American flags out front. I did not see rainbow flags. I damn sure didn't see the Wiener steeple on top of the building. So I'm positive we are not standing in the hallowed halls of Woke United Methodist. Do you have a question about actual baseball? No? All right. Please pass the microphone to someone else, and please, take off your mask. Your dentist will appreciate it. That's why Pat McAfee is hosting and Uncle KC is not. I almost felt bad for him because Pat McAfee, he looked completely lost. He was pretending like he couldn't hear what she was saying. He was trying to formulate an appropriate response. He was trying to be professional, but what the hell was he supposed to say? If I had to guess, Pat McAfee probably has no idea why the All-Star game was moved back in 2021. He doesn't like to get political. Plus, it was 4 years ago. The dude is being paid to be a moderator. He's being paid to take questions about Major League Baseball. He wasn't being paid to answer questions about some doofus voting law in Georgia. At one point, Pat McAfee passed the question over to Dave Roberts. I guess 4 years ago, Dave Roberts was a part of the Stop Asian Hate movement. He was born in Japan, so I can understand why that cause would be important to him. But even Dave Roberts knew this was not the time and place. This was not a town hall with Raphael Warnock. This was an event to promote the All-Star Game. This is what happens when you allow activists in sports media. Let's just assume for a second that Jen Ramos Eisen is an actual sports journalist. Her job is to write about minor league baseball. It's not her job to analyze rosters and highlight teams lacking diversity. It's not her job to analyze voting laws in Georgia and question why Atlanta is hosting the All-Star Game. Her job is to cover baseball. There's no need to go above and beyond. Just cover the damn game. Give me your thoughts on this. Some woke reporter embarrasses herself asking why Major League Baseball had the audacity to schedule the All-Star Game in Atlanta. Sound off in the comments below. I'll see you guys tomorrow.